Alright guys, so we're going to take a look. This is going to be the 6th and final game for the Hexproof deck. Hopefully you enjoyed this and checked out the article and whatnot when it goes up. This is opening hand right here, and this example game is more for people playing against Hexproof. My opponent makes an interesting mistake. Just wanted to use it, point it out to you guys. So you do not make the same one. So I talked about if you catch game 5, one of the important things with this deck is being an aggressive mulliganer. Okay, good. I think I said that all right. So you want to aggressively drop this hand down to 6 and so on, because you want to find a creature in this late deck. We are on the draw, so it is going to work much better. And this is what I got in 6. 6 is not good. We had 2 search lands, which is okay, it'll thin things out, but still no creature, so I'm going to attempt to drop it to 5, and this is what I come up with, and it is not good either. There is 1 land in hand. I am going to decide to keep it just because I didn't want to drop down any lower than 5, but you'll see in a minute it's going to take a while to get to finding a creature. So Evolving Wilds comes out. We do not draw a second land yet, but we are going to use the Evolving Wilds to fetch a forest. My opponent gets a rather fast start, I guess, with the Festering Goblin. Gonna be not a big deal to me because of the Hexproof. When this Goblin dies, you see, let's enlarge this again, he has that ability for target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, but because of the fact that all my creatures have Hexproof, he's gonna have to use that on his own creatures if it dies. Which is, something he's got to be aware of. So we do manage to draw into our second land on our second turn. Going to use it to fetch out a second green. Green is definitely the significant color in this deck. If we get another one, we'll fetch out white, but you want to make sure you have a decent green base to start off. You see here, turn 3, no third land, but we do get into a Briar Shield. It's going to be, like I said, tough for a while until we get to that point where we get a creature. So turn 4, get into our third land. Like I said, I'm going to use that to get a plains out, and we don't need any more, so that's going to set us up. Hopefully, we're going to be at a disadvantage here. You see my opponent is getting the opportunity to swing through several times, so having the plains in play is going to give us the opportunity to play an Armadillo Cloak as soon as it comes to hand. And as soon as we have a creature. I guess that's the more important part, isn't it? So, taking more, we reach this point here. I'm now back up to 7 cards in hand. My opponent keeps fetching out lands here. And you see I am at 7 cards at hand, so you have kind of a predicament that'll come up in a second here. Drops the land, attacks through again. So we're at the end of turn and I'm at 8. Now, you have this point where I could have decided to suspend a plating from my hand. That would prevent me from discarding. However, if in the 2 turns it takes for this card to come into play, I do not get a creature onto the field. When this finishes with suspend, I am going to have to attach it to an opponent's creature. So it's definitely, if you decided to suspend that, that is taking quite the risk, quite the gamble, especially after such a poor start. So you see here, I decided to not suspend it. Instead, I am going to discard it because it is one of the weaker of the enchantments. Having 1 is great, 2 is a little bit much. At this point in the game, you're going to be hard casting those and not really worrying about suspend. So getting rid of that, next time I would probably get rid of, next turn I would probably get rid of a Treetop Bracer. Because, that's kind of the order of importance. So opponent's fetching out yet another land. Definitely getting good with that. And I finally hit my first creature here. So I'm going to play the Ledgewalker. Notice I make sure to tap out the white mana from my colorless so that I have this 1 green available, and I will be able to play a Briar Shield on it. My opponent taps out in response, which I thought was an interesting thing. I didn't know what he was playing, and it actually turned out to be Dash Hopes, which is a fantastic card that came out of Planar Chaos. It was one of my favorite blocks, and there's a lot of fun stuff there that allows him to counter the spell unless any player plays or pays 5 life. So he gets the option first. He is, of course, going to not choose to pay 5 life. I am actually going to pay the 5. It has taken me this long. We are now into turn 7, and I am finally getting my first creature, so it is absolute importance that I finally get a creature onto the field. Taking 5 life is, probably going to be the compromise here. If I didn't take the 5 life, it would probably be at least 5 turns of taking damage to this little 1/1 goblin here, so I'm probably going to take 5 life either way. by taking that 5 life directly, I can immediately put these these enchantments into play, into use, and start thinning out my hand a little bit. Hopefully he doesn't hit into an Edict, which is going to be a good answer, and being black, it's exactly the deck that's going to have it. Also hope for Armadillo Cloak at some point in time to try and get our life back up. 9 isn't so far out of hand that it's going to be trouble. You see, you drew a 4th land here. We are going to be able to, my opponent hasn't played any other creatures, so we are going to be able to attack through with the Walker and not really worry about taking too much damage in response. So I'm going to keep attacking through. I'm going to go down to 8, and it'll go back and forth because he's not going to want to block with the Goblin. Bit of a misplay here, knowing that my opponent is running these black counterspell and dash hopes. What I should have done first is I have the mana available to play a mask plus suspend plating, or I can play 2 enchantments at 2 cost. So what I decided to do is, or what I should have done, let me say, is play the Bracers first. Now, the Bracers is a card that I don't really care if I get rid of it as the weaker of these 2 drops, so knowing my opponent has those and being at 9 life, if he uses another counterspell, I'm not going to want to counter it. Not going to want to pay the 5 life to stop it from countering. So I should have played Treetop Bracers first. He does have the Dash Hope, and now I am going to lose the Armor of Thorns by not paying the life, and get stuck with just Treetop Bracers, when it would have been a stronger play here to have the Armor of Thorns on it. It would be 1 extra damage on that turn, and that's not a lot right away, but it's going to help out in the long run. Now my opponent's turn. He attacks through, and this is what I said, we're at a point where we're at low life, but we can pump up this Ledge Walker fast enough to damage out my opponent before he gets a chance to actually, damage me down for 9. Especially when he's not playing creatures like this. So now he makes, this is what I said about making mistakes. I talked about the Festering Goblin here, and he has this ability that target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. But because my creatures have the Hexproof, he can't target my creatures. So when he plays this Blister Beetle, it triggers the ability here that gives target creature -1/-1. The problem is he can't target my Ledge Walker, which means that he has to give it to either his Beetle or his Goblin. And he decides to, the smart thing here, he says, oh, I made a mistake, let me not target my Beetle so that I have a blocker, which is a wrong move anyways, because the Ledge Walker can't be blocked except for by flying. But I'm assuming that was his rationale here. So he targets his Goblin, and in doing so, he kills the Goblin and triggers the Goblin's ability, and the only thing legal target for that is the Beetle. So he makes a mistake there and ends up killing both of his creatures, when I had, this on the board. Now, he does replay a Festering Goblin, and that's, okay, but he's definitely hurt himself with that move. And you see here, we finally do draw into our Armadillo Cloak, and when this comes down, it's going to be game over, because I'm going to easily be able to regain that life. Tapping out the mana here, just make sure, you notice here I use my 1 colorless as the 2nd white. You only need 1 white, so leave that other green open, we would have been able to suspend this plating. But my opponent does concede because he does realize this game is over. The Walker is going to go up to a 5/5 Trampler, and I'm going to go up in life 5, so it's definitely put me out of range of him. He's apparently running some form of Black Weenie with these -1/-1s. It's just, the showcase here was mostly the fact that just remember when you're playing against it that these effects like these Goblins and the Beetle here, they have to target something. So if there's nothing else to target, it's like the Flame Tongue Kabu, if there's nothing else for it to target, it has to target itself, and so on. So hopefully you learned it, hopefully you enjoyed the series, and as always, check out the other example games, the deck tech, and the article.